Let's get on with it. As Leonard Parkin said after the 1979 ITV strike, which I'm sure I've used before as an opener to this program, it's 4020, not live. I'm vaguely in the shade. It's hot out. Phil's been to the Magic Weekend. So you've lost a tooth, Phil. What's that all about?
Well, not by choice, but no, it had to go.
Oh.
So it's an age thing, I think.
Like Tony Smith at Hull KR the other week.
Yes, so if there looks like some kind of swelling, there probably is. But it was planned. It's nothing to do with Magic Weekend.
That's okay. I thought there must have been some wonderfully carbon neutral cakes or something in the press room, but
no, just age.
How was Newcastle? As a TV viewer, I enjoyed it. Well, I enjoyed what's 5 out of 6 of the matches, even though I didn't watch the 2 others on the Saturday. I enjoyed most of the Magic Weekend.
I think we were rightly a little bit sceptical beforehand, as we were before we went to Tottenham, that the occasion would live up to the billing that we hoped it would, that the action would be everything we hoped it would be. But, every time we question rugby league, the 2 things that dig you out are the fans and their loyalty, and the players and their ability. And it was absolutely fantastic. It was as good a Magic Weekend in the round as anyone I've been to. I mean, clearly having great weather helps. It just adds to a sprightliness to the mood. And of course, there was an artisan ice cream seller in the fan zone, and you've got to, haven't you? That obviously is a part of the day. 62,000 people, 62,500 people would say, is that a good or a bad attendance? I think where we are this season in terms of what's being asked of fans, clearly the cost of living crisis, which you have to factor in at the moment. I think that, to get more than we did the last time we had a Magic Weekend was an excellent return. And yeah, we can market it better. And yes, we can, we've asked post the figures coming out, what percentage of people are there from the Northeast and its region. We haven't had the answer on that yet. All of that needs to go into the wash and the review. And I think what it did prove was that Newcastle, if you're going to have the Magic, whatever format you have it, when you have it in the season, whether it's part of the regular season or one of these horrid loop fixtures that we should be getting rid of, Newcastle's the right place to have it. Absolutely buzzing. I think the other thing that was great for just wandering around was not just the shirts of a lot of clubs that were there when their teams weren't playing. So you could see, I'm picking totally at random, Hull and Hull KR fans there on the Saturday, even though they were the last game on the Sunday. It's the variety of shirts within each supporting group was amazing as well. So, there were commemorative shirts, especially for the occasion. And arguably the best one of them all was the Rob Burrow one. And there were loads of those in evidence. And again, that lent enchantment to the weekend as well, having him there and obviously his kids leading out the team. And he, absolutely massive kudos to Castleford for buying into that as well. He's from the town and they had his logo and insignia on their kits. All of that, fantastic. But every club supporters wore such a vast array of colourful kits that it added to the atmosphere. I think the other thing they really got right this year was that they had a really important game to kick it off, which they couldn't have known. But in terms of significance, that Wakefield Toulouse game meant a lot of people were in the stadium. And clearly, a whole derby at the end, which finished in the way that it did, bearing in mind that both of those teams had no form going into the game. The atmosphere again and the sound in the stadium as it finished. Normally, it's the last 2,000 that are standing and we need to get off and get our train and do you fancy leaving a bit early to miss the traffic? There was none of that because you just couldn't go. That game was, right to the last minute and the last play. So all the ingredients, the bravery, Ben Garcia having his ear ripped off. There are so many stories, all of them that reflect really well on the sport. And the action, I think, was, as you said, I think you make a case for there was something intrinsic in all 6 of the games. And certainly, Wigan Saints was as good a game as we've seen this season.
I think as a TV viewer, so I'm looking at this as someone who pays my money to Sky, and I'm sat at home and I've got 6 games of rugby league in one venue over the weekend, I thought it felt different to a regular round because Sky present it slightly differently. It's not just the usual suspects on there. You had, Earl Crabtree turn up and look like a giant compared to Brian McDermott. And Jimmy Just Buchanan isn't a small person, is he? But he's
a big
tiny.
lad. He's a big lad.
I mean, Brian Carney's a winger, so he will be small. But Carl Harrison, of course, who famously wouldn't speak to Radio Yorkshire, he was on the telly. So he just had that different kind of feeling to it because it was different. I enjoyed it as a TV viewer. So, as you say, all the games had something in them. You don't notice, I know people bang on about empty seats. You don't notice them because it's a bit like the Union Sevens crowd, people drift in and out of the ground. You're not expected to be there from 12 o'clock until whatever time the last game finishes. It's not that kind of event. You're supposed to drift in and out, go to the fan zone or whatever. The atmosphere comes across fine on TV. I've been there. I love the location. It's great. The fans obviously love it. If it wasn't magic, that you could do something else there. I'm not sure what. I mean, now we've decided that, maybe Wembley's not the be-all and end-all. Maybe you do have the Challenge Cup final there because it is, without using the word iconic, it is one of those great grounds, those great cathedral-style sports grounds that would give you the right location for a Challenge Cup final or a grand final if we have to move away from Old Trafford for a time.
I think what's important is that you are so close to the city. So it's a destination that's just far enough away where you seriously do need to think, actually, staying over might be a bit of fun and meeting up with people who, you don't see that often during the season, maybe when only your 2 teams are meeting each other and even going into the city centre and, having a coffee or a beer or whatever is your particular beverage of choice. The welcome from the Geordie people is genuine. They really do like this event on their doorstep. Certain coffee emporium that is normally the magnet for lots of rugby league players and fans was doing an absolutely roaring trade. But again, it helps when the weather is so good and people want to wander around, and the fan zone probably didn't have much in it that we hadn't seen before, but it seemed to me to be better attended. I think because people wanted to be outside because they knew that, once the game started, they might be spending 6 or 7 hours inside. But the facilities inside the stadium are great. They've got all the outlets that you'd want in sufficient number that you can always get a drink or something to eat. It wouldn't work as well as it did if it wasn't such a welcoming city, but also if the action hadn't been so good. And we were talking about, what was it that we liked at Spurs, because we'd never been there before. And I thought one of the things that really made that, and obviously in some respects took away from the fact that perhaps it wasn't full, was that the acoustics were magnificent. So that those who were there created a fantastic atmosphere for those that were inside and also those watching on the television. And the Wigan Saints game in particular, and in all of the games, there were periods where the crowd played a significant part. But the Wigan and Saints game, the sound was bouncing from the Leeds end to the Gallagher end and back again as the match itself fluctuated. And when it got to that ridiculous climax, where both sets of fans were shrieking themselves hoarse with what might, I mean, clearly Wigan thought they'd won it, and Saints did to Wigan what they'd had done to them by Catalan the year before. By the time that game finished, you just wanted to hug somebody because it was rugby league at its very, very best. Clearly I don't want to pour salt into your open wound, but even when the Toulouse game finished, there weren't a lot of Toulouse fans there, but there was a significant number that made themselves heard. And just above the press area in the Milburn stand, there's a natural, like a wall that seals off, that goes up into then the corporate areas and the seats in that stand. And all of the Toulouse fans who come to the game, and there must have been, I don't know, 50, 70 of them maybe, were all lined up along that wall singing incredible songs and trying to get the message over to the players just as they were coming off. And again, if you're a neutral, it was a fantastic, we don't, that's something to celebrate as a sport. It really was a couple of days where you could turn around and say there are not many other sports that could have all their 12 top teams in the same city, unsegregated, playing in matches that, to all intents and purposes, not only had meaning, but a lot of them were close. Some of them were controversial. Not a hint of trouble. It was. If IMG were there or watching that, and I'm sure they would probably both, again, they'd be going, right, we've seen the Challenge Cup final tick, I like this sport. We've seen some internationals tick, like this sport. Seen some wheelchair tick, like this sport. Do you know they had their own magic weekend as well this weekend? Wheelchair?
Well, I did after the fact. I'm sure I probably knew before, but I'd forgotten, which is a shame on me.
And then we go, magic weekend for the men's running game, tick. We love that. So, we are presenting our best face to them at the moment. As we said last week, before we even knew how many people will be there, I find it odd that we play anything else during this weekend. If this is your showcase, if this is what you want to sell to the outside world, if this is a festival for everybody in the truest sense, that what we're celebrating is not necessarily who's won each game, although it's great to look at that and analyse that, but actually just getting the rugby league supporters all together, then we really shouldn't be having Championship, League One, or Community Rugby League, or even Wheelchair Rugby League played at the same time. There were a lot of people that I know of that had divided loyalties, didn't know whether to go and support their own team or whether to go and support the event. And we shouldn't ask them to do that. It's ridiculous. And that may have got us the extra 5,000 people who would have been a record attendance. Who knows? But I think if you were sat in your Super League office this afternoon, counting up the pros, balancing out the cons, huge success.
Positivity here. I'll tell you about my experience on Saturday in a moment. One idea I did have, which is I'm sure we must have discussed this before, if we were going to move away from Newcastle, would be to go back to the Etihad and make it a real festival. So not just Super League games, but also Championship, League One, Women's Super League in the arena next door, the mini Estadi, where Man City women they're playing games at the Euros as well, because you could, and then you can flip between, like if you go to Glastonbury, you don't have to go to see what's on the pyramid stage, you can go to the other one or whatever. I don't know, because I don't think festivals. Do I look like the kind of person who would go to a festival? No. Now, I did on Saturday go to Bramall Lane, which of course will be hosting England versus Greece in the World Cup coming up. You could have heard from John Dutton on the programme. I interviewed him last week, but it was on Teams and it didn't record properly, so you didn't miss anything. But he played a brilliant straight back to my question about Nadine Dorries. So, what can you do? He's a professional. But I went to Bramall Lane to watch the Euros because we got tickets. Netherlands versus Sweden. And, we people criticise Super League, and we do sometimes, but there was nothing to do at the ground. There was no fan zone at the ground. There was somewhere else in Sheffield, but if you're actually at the ground itself, there's nothing to do there. Bar watch a football match, which obviously is what you're there for. But it did feel like, it felt like an event, but only because of the brilliant Dutch and Swedish supporters who were there. Yeah. Of which I don't know how many of the 20,000 were Dutch and Swedish, but there were lots of orange and lots of yellow. We were sat next to the Swedes in the Cop who had a massive drum and a megaphone, who didn't shut up from after the anthems finished to the end of the game. They made the atmosphere. If they hadn't have been there, it would have been a bit sterile. Now, the sport, the first half was a bit meh. Second half was much better. It was a good game. Finished 1-1. But that's irrelevant. As an event, I think without those fans there, it wouldn't have had the positive impact it's had on me. Whereas, obviously, we talk about the Magic Weekend. There was a great atmosphere. It came across on TV. And I think any neutrals there would have bought into it.
I was talking to somebody there in the press room who is monitoring the Women's Euros at the moment. And I think you should do, because you can learn from other tournaments. Clearly, we've got, a massive one coming up at the end of the year. And they'd been to Old Trafford for the opening game, said, fantastic, got everything right, filled the stadium, great noise, loads of kids, especially young girls, screeching all the way through it. Different sound, different vibe to men's football. Then when, I think, was it Southampton? Was there a game in Southampton?
Yeah. I think that was the Northern Ireland Norway game, perhaps.
And said, not the same. Again, clearly the same amount of effort hadn't gone into making that opening game a sellout into one of the group games. And 9,000 people or whatever the official attendance was in St Mary's, it didn't have that atmosphere. Not to detract in any way from the game. I'm sure it was brilliant. I've watched a bit of the Women's Euros. I really like it. I think the skill levels are really high, and there is a huge buy-in. But I think just putting something on these days is not enough. Just saying there's a fixture. I think you do have to do things around it. We were very lucky at Magic that what we got to talk about for 2 solid days was what had happened on the field. And, you know, some incredible individual and team performances, and some games that will have a bearing as we move a little bit further down the line to the end of the season. Good time to have it. We've not had it in July before. And I think with a third of the season still to go, those games had a little bit more meaning. When it's right at the end of the season, it's probably too close to the end. It's almost a distorting round in some ways. When it's too early in the season, there isn't really a form line. When it was this weekend, you know, Saturday, for example, you had a game that is going to determine what may happen at the bottom. You've got a game that's going to determine what may happen at the top. And there was a game that may determine which teams are going to make the playoffs. You know, you could not have had that better for terms of maintaining the interest even for the neutral. So we were fortunate in that respect, but the players delivered. And I think you're right, you've got to be careful. Put a game on, tell people about it. That's one thing. Give them a reason to go and enjoy the experience, and almost it's a little bit like going to Catalan. And hopefully next week I'll let you know what it's like going to Toulouse as well. But you minimise what the 80 minutes means while you're there. You're going to have an experience. You're going because it's something you may only do once in your life, and it's possibly the excitement of getting on a plane to go to a rugby league. You know, all of those things. You want to do it if you can at least once to say you've done it. And I think Magic was a bit like that this weekend, particularly that there was understandable scepticism, but once you got there and you bought into it, and there was so much to do, and there were so many people that were just enjoying being there and being part of it. And again, go back to the very first point I made, the weather really helps. If it had been raining, it wouldn't have been the same. But have it in July, there's a fair chance it's not going to be raining. It had everything. And you know, you're right, we do, where we feel it's right and proper, point out deficiencies perhaps of administration. Whoever worked so hard to put that Magic weekend on, all of the people that there were a lot of volunteers there. I think they deserved enormous credit. That there aren't that many staff in Super League and the RFL these days. Those that were there had to do a hell of a lot of work covering a number of areas. Hats off to them. And I think Sky as well. You know, we all have our feelings about whether they're treating us now as, you know, we're getting to the end of a long relationship, and perhaps it's not as loving as it once was. Whether that's true or not, sometimes you feel like that. But you know, they put time and effort into that. They save money on the camera positions, the technical side of things, but they were investing in, you know, whether you like the technology or not, you think it adds to the experience or not. To have that, and John Wells analysing it as it goes up, it's a different dimension. It made it feel different. I'm not sure what it told us. It told us that Ash Hanley's very fast running back and tackling Greg Edam. We probably got that from watching it, but you didn't know how fast that was compared to other people. You know, the meters gained was really interesting, and you know, the fact that players do almost 10k in a game at high speed, you should never take that for granted. But I think that they work really hard to. You'll know there isn't a huge gap between games, and the longer a game goes on with either an injury or the prospect of golden point extra time, the harder it is for broadcasters to get everything and do everything that they want to do. They work really hard. I briefly spoke to Jenna Brooks over the water cooler, which we all needed on Saturday for sure. After the second game, and she was knackered. You know, genuinely excited and really up for it. But, you know, one game is tiring mentally, you know, to keep switched on. Two is doubly so. 6 over the course of a weekend. I would imagine they've all been asleep today because everybody worked really hard to make it a success, and it was.
Yeah,
unless you support a team who perhaps didn't.
Well, yeah, it's going to be tough now for the Wakefield Club Shop to sell those kits, isn't it? Even though I like it, but it's another Magic Weekend special kit in which we've lost that we've got to try and sell. So good luck to the team in the shop, my former colleagues there. My thoughts are with you. Anything on the field that you want to mention at the Magic Weekend that we haven't mentioned so far? Obviously the results are there in black and white, and I've got my own counsel on who I should blame for Wakefield losing. I mean, why didn't Rob Hicks stay retired? This is the main question I'm asking. Of course, that's not who I'm blaming. It's just a joke. But it was.
What was bizarre if we take them in sort of chronological order, and we should say the Stephen Mullaney game was the first game that we saw, the Year 7 boys who would normally be at Wembley. And I think you quite rightly said that game just disappeared off the agenda when the 1895 Cup moved to before the Challenge Cup final. Well, they did play it. I don't think that wasn't particularly well advertised that game was going to start it off. It kicked off at 12 and or it might have been 12:30, and of course the gates had only just opened. So again, it was another of those occasions where the boys clearly loved it. But if you're going to do it when 5,000 people are in the stadium. And I get you can't because there's a lack of facilities and changing rooms and all that kind of thing. But yeah, Castleford Academy won that. Good game, close game.
Good weekend for Cast. I think they won 3 of the finals. Cast.
They look good. Some good talent. Didn't see any Southern schools in the final, but I'm told there was a Welsh one at.
Yes. I think it was a girls' school actually won. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's hope that we can raise the profile of champion schools over the next couple of years. I know that it took a huge hit during COVID because it wasn't just the restrictions and allowing the games to play again. There were, schools were hit, rightly but ridiculously in terms of even getting back to playing organised games. So it will probably take a couple of years to get back to what it was. But that needs to be highlighted as a feature in the calendar. And if you are going to play the game as a curtain raiser, let us know. There may not have been too many more people that wanted to watch 4 games instead of 3, but it's what the boys deserve. I think a juncture here to talk about LDRL as well, which made a couple of appearances over the weekend on the main pitch, and there was some activity going on the pitch outside as well in St James's Park itself. Joy on the faces of people. Justify it. It's not about who won. It's about wearing the colours of the team. It's about being able to play on a pitch, the cheers that those players got whenever they appeared from anyone and everyone was absolutely fantastic. There's some social media stuff out there. If you can find it, click on it. Community Integrated Care took some film. I think each of the foundations that were involved took some film. Just watch it for the faces of the people that played. It will be a lifetime highlight. So I think, getting the boys on there, getting the LDRL on there, enormous credit. First men's game. It could be the 2 most costliest sin bins in the history of a club if Wakefield do go down. They were so in control in the first half that you could not predict the Toulouse fight back. But all but the try the Olympics scored in the first half, all of their other points came when they were playing against 12 men. And I just think, again, partly that is indiscipline in knowing how to play when you're in a commanding position, putting pressure on your teammates because you're doing things that you don't need to do. And we'll come on to coaches in a minute, but they were so costly for Wakefield, and I do think both of them were needless as well. And I know the heat of the moment, that a tip tackle is something that if you're committed, it's hard to stop. But that's going to cause at least a sin binning, possibly worse. Never mind the injury it might cause. It's like shoulder charges. You just don't do it. I think the David Fafita one again. Don't give the referee any reason at all to sin bin you. Yeah, just don't do it. You don't need to do it. There were literally, I think, about 15 seconds to go till the break. You're 24 up. You've just scored a try. You've milked the applause from the supporters that treat you as a cult figure. And then you go and leave your teammates in the lurch. And ultimately, those fans that love you could literally point the finger and say, you cost them. I think Wakefield have got an absolutely massive game this weekend because of what happened. The way the table's shaped up now, they need to beat Hull KR and put a gap of 2 points between them and Rovers. There's pressure. There is pressure. But that is a game that Wakefield should not have won. And again, the screaming and screeching and carrying on of the Toulouse fans was relief. And I think that, just going back to coaches briefly, there's been some astonishing honesty from coaches this weekend. I thought Sylvain Hulls was fantastic, who said it was do or die for us. Had we lost that game, I think we would have been relegated. But Matty Pete was fantastic. You know, suffered absolute heartbreak at the hands of their deepest enemy. Didn't blame Brad Singleton sending off. Talked about other things that his team could have done. I thought probably the best interview of the entire weekend was Danny Mcguire, because if anybody had reason in his first game as a head coach to bemoan what he'd seen, his team scored 6 tries to 5. A refereeing decision at the end is overturned on evidence that perhaps the video referee could see that others maybe couldn't. But he didn't mention it. He didn't want to mention it. He just talked about how proud he was of his team. I think that virtually every coach that was interviewed, even Willie Poaching, was totally dignified in what he believed were the reasons as to why his team was lost. And you do get fed up, particularly in football, of seeing coaches blame anyone and everyone but themselves and their team when it is in their hands. There were some fantastic examples of people who behaved with extreme honour under massive duress. So hats off particularly to Willie for his dignity in now being in a self-acknowledged very difficult position, and Sylvain for the honesty of saying, you know, we talk about must-win games. We were gone if we didn't win that one, and we've come away with it and won it.
It's in our hands, though, so it's all right. It's like the Northern Irish women's manager who blamed the referee because they were playing Norway and the referee was Swedish or Finnish or something, because obviously they all get along in Scandinavia. It's not like over here where we all hate each other.
Well, he blamed the referee for the fact that his team couldn't play the ball out of defence without giving it away and conceding goals.
Yeah.
And I only watched it as a neutral fan.
He's a bit of he's what they would call a character, is the Northern Irish women's manager. That's the polite phrase for it. So wait if you lost.
So I don't know what your boys did to throw that away. I really don't.
Well, you've mentioned the key point of the game. I mean, why you give away a penalty at that point of a half when everything's comfortable? I don't know. I
think the other thing as well is because of the situation they're in the second half, when things started to go against them, very good players stop doing things that make them very good. And it's understandable, because when there is a roll on, I won't use the word momentum in case Rod's tuning in. The first thing you have to do is try and get the ball back. And you stop doing the things, you know, even the territorial way that you play the game, because you panic, you try and solve things yourself. You throw passes that aren't on, or you miss tackles that you wouldn't normally miss. And it was just one of those occasions where once Toulouse got in a groove, they played with the Gallic flair that meant that when the ball sticks, it's worth the try that they scored off Jacob Miller's hands. That just shows that when a team is running a tide, it goes with them. When a team is completely out of luck, it doesn't. And I think, again, your heads drop a little bit more because you think you've done enough to at least stop that attack. And then it goes up to the video ref and quite rightly gives the try. So, I think Wakefield just got caught in the headlights towards the end.
I'm just looking on an online thesaurus for other words for momentum we can use. when they've got the drive, the thrust. Oh, that's the other
the ascendancy.
Yeah, that's the other use of the word of momentum, really, isn't it? That's not the one I mean. Encouragement, the impetus, the incentive. Perfect. There you go. There's a few more for later. Just use if anyone's wanting to tweet something and to annoy Rod, just put that instead. So it's all right. So big game this week for Wakefield and Toulouse, of course. They've both got big games this weekend. And that following that rather, St Helens versus Wigan, 20 points to 18. In the week where Regan Grace he's going for the challenge of billions of pounds in France, and good luck to him. Fleece them for all they've got, Regan. It's all dirty money from the Vichy government. He scored his 90th try, apparently. I read it somewhere. But Wigan, brave, plucky Wigan, did not win. St Helens did. And a very entertaining game from the highlights I've seen.
Absolutely magnificent. I mean, in terms of quality, one of the best games of the season. But when you look at just that last 10 minutes, Wigan conjure a fantastic try. And that combination between Field and French is at times completely undefendable. Saints have got the best defence in the competition, and there is no way, however good you are, you can stop pace and the ability and vision to carve out the kind of try that looked like it had won Wigan the game. It was a magnificent piece of play. But I have to go to the final try that won it, which I think sums up why St Helens are so good. Will Hopewati, who's barely played, but was magnificent on Saturday afternoon. Absolutely superb. He passes a ball with virtually the last play of the game. Again, one of these sight unseen pass and give, receive and give balls that under pressure 9 times out of 10 would go forward in the stand, on the floor. The accuracy of that pass when you watch it again and the speed with which it was thrown and he tipped it on was an astonishing piece of skill. Joe Batchelor, who must surely at the moment, if they were to stop the voting for Man of Steel now, would win it. I mean, he's playing the most unbelievable rugby. Not only is in the right position to take the pass, but under that kind of pressure makes the right decision to dummy to the Wigan defence and go through the gap. That again, I can't imagine what goes through the head of a player who is, you've got so many options in front of him, but everything on the line to make the right decision, and the skill level to be able to do it in the knowledge that when he ships the ball inside, Johnny Lomax has come from nowhere to score the winning try. It was a work of art, that try. And Wigan had scored a brilliant one where they kicked inside for Bateman at the start of the second half. It had everything. There was enormous ferocity in defence. Again, a moment of indiscretion from Brad Singleton, who's got 3 games for his challenge. I don't think I'd be very surprised if we're going to appeal that. They didn't make a big deal of it afterwards in terms of they thought it was unjust. But that as a neutral was as good a game as you could wish to see. They both enjoyed playing on the wide open spaces with the sun on their back. It encouraged them to play. But the ferocity of the defences early on was magnificent. The skill level, it's highest. But also, I think just the ability to stick to what they knew at the time when it was tested the most was fantastic from both teams. There was nothing in it, but Saints again proved to us in the last minute of a big game why they are the best team at the moment.
Saints, Wigan, a Rembrandt, Wakefield, Indiscipline, Pablo Picasso. There's 2 artists. I couldn't even name anything Rembrandt has done. Probably some fields or something. I don't know. I didn't study art after we could have a choice. I can't paint. I can't draw.
Who's the Banksy?
Who is the modern rugby league maverick? Is there one? Is it Rangi Chase still?
I think after this weekend, Mikey Lewis is Banksy.
Coming up on the programme, we will have an interview with Harry Jones of the Wales wheelchair team, who you will discover is the second person in the history of this programme who has changed from dancing to rugby league. I can't believe there's another one, I know. But we were
going on a historic trip as well. We won't spoil it, but...
I mean, I might spoil it on the thumbnail for the thing, but and we'll talk about that in a bit. Because we're talking about the Magic Weekend. We talked about Wakefield and Toulouse. We talked about Saints and Wigan. And Saturday ended with Leeds beating Castleford. The people behind me at the football were updating me on the score on this one. I didn't ask them to. They just kept telling me who was winning. Which
nice of them.
Yeah. And there's, Castle winning, they said. But Cass did not win in the end. Cass lost to Leeds. Two great kits. What Magic Weekend's all about, blah, blah, blah. But, important win for Leeds after Castleford have picked up a couple in recent weeks as well.
Yeah, they've now beaten Hull and Castleford, who are the two teams that they would normally be chasing now for the last probably remaining spot in the playoffs. But both teams had significant players missing. Leeds lost Blake Austin in the run-up. Word here for Corey Johnson, who should have been playing for Bradford on Friday night in their Magic Friday game with Newcastle. Less said about that for Bradford, the better. Difficult. It always happens, doesn't it? You make an appointment where you upgrade the coach who's done such a good job on an interim basis, and you suffer your worst defeat of the season. But
we need to segue into that at some point, so we'll have to do it in a bit.
And the fallout of that as well, of Nigel Wood issuing a statement saying, "I didn't disrespect anybody in the aftermath." Corey Johnson could have been part of that game. Instead, he was at Magic Weekend playing for Leeds. I think there's a lot of people that when he first came through the academy at Headingley was saying, you can sometimes see people that are in advance of their contemporaries, and you look at them and go, they could really make it. And Johnson was that kid about 3 years ago, and for whatever reason, I think decided that rugby league wasn't for him and took a sabbatical from it. I think he agreed to become a full-time professional and then didn't want to. Went back to, I think it was Hunslet Parkside, and regained his love of the game just playing among his mates. Ended up, playing a bit at York, and now he's back in that professional environment. Called in Thursday afternoon when Austin injured his leg in a training session, playing in the unfamiliar position of standoff when he is, to all intents and purposes, a hooker, and could well be the reason why Brad Dwyer might not be offered a contract at Leeds. And again, whatever you read into the stats of what was put up there by Sky, was the only player, I think, that appeared in all three measurements that they took. So meters made and speed and what was the tackling? Was it tackling? I can't remember. But was in all of them. And again, for a early 20s kid who's playing his what would it be? I think fourth game of the season this season. Not expected to be there. That was an astonishing performance that got lost in a lot of other really good performances. Leeds were patient. The previous week against Hull, they got dominance through their attack. They had to match Cass in the first half in their defence, and then they had a purple period of, I think, 5 tries in, was it 20 odd minutes that effectively won them the game, playing some lovely rugby. And Cass, who I think couldn't quite match the intensity at that time in the game, left themselves too much to do. So no, it had more to it than just an internecine West Yorkshire battle. Leeds now go to Toulouse. It's a game they could win. We're being told it's 40-degree temperatures expected. The kickoff's been put back by 2 hours to try and make it a little bit cooler for the players. I think that drops it from 40 to 38. I'm not sure it's going to make that amount of difference. But they could win and again put pressure on the teams above them. So it looks a lot different 2 weeks down the line. Cass are just inconsistent. And clearly, losing Jake Truman for the remainder of his career there was a massive issue because it does affect your creativity. But Westerman was astonishing. 51 tackles, top tackler in the game. Played more like a standoff than a loose forward. Interesting duel with Cameron Smith. Both of them almost throwbacks to the Mick Crane type of loose forward, the ball handlers, but West Ham got through a huge amount of work as well. Beretta Faraimo on the wing was excellent, and the chase back for Ash Hanley to catch. Greg Eden probably says where Leeds are at the moment, because it was 5 minutes from time. He didn't have to do it, and the experiment of Eden at standoff for Truman, I don't think worked as well as Johnson at standoff for Leeds, but an enjoyable game.
Yeah, and as we say, two of the best kits of the weekend by far. I know it's a charity element, but I like both of them, which, that's sticking in the throat. It's not very good.
And how good was it when Rob and his family were put on the big screen, that everybody in the stadium, no matter who they supported, just broke into absolute spontaneous applause and gestures of love. And, Rob put a statement out when he got back saying what a fantastic time he'd had and how much it meant to him. And again, yes, results are very important. That's what Magic Weekend's about.
Well, he did the 10K the other week as well.
He did.
That Sinfield fella.
Thrown about in a chair.
Is he going to get a knighted on the resignation honours? Do we know yet?
No, he's in rugby union now, so Nadine will say for his services to Leicester Rugby League, Kevin Sinfield.
I've got on your name, I'm going to put Red Wall, and under mine I'm going to put Home of the Education Minister. So just a one. Right.
I realised today that Liz Truss was in Roundhay while I was in a similar part of Leeds. Claimed it was a deprived area. She obviously didn't go to the park or the Canal Gardens.
Or South Leeds, which is where Wakefield is these days. Enough of that.
There's a little bit of politics in the new 4020 magazine, which I feel at this point I can mention.
Yes,
as it's out on Friday.
Because I might forget. Yeah,
I think it's safe to say one of our columnists is incandescent with rage at Mazdoris, which is a lovely piece.
Go Nads hashtag. Sunday started with the Ian Watson derby, and aren't those Salford fans saltier again because he signed an extended deal at Huddersfield? And some of those fans are saying, "Oh, he'll leave at the end of the season." Ha 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 ha. But the Giants showing their quality in the end. Everyone loved Brodie Croft, and I guess play for Salford is a bit like it's a shot for Wigan to sign players in the future. I'm sure. Well, maybe not Wigan, but some will be. Trying to get Brodie Croft out of his deal at Salford at some point in the near future, as they did with Jackson Hastings. But good performance from Salford, but Huddersfield too good, as we know they have been for most of this season.
I think you're right that the most important thing for Huddersfield fans wasn't just getting back on the horse after a flat performance the week before, but the fact that Ian Watson said he's only just started this transition to the way he wants them to play, and he's now there till 2026. That arguably piece of news was more important than the result, I think. Very strong in the first half. Really, really good. Tuilola here back to what he's been doing really well this year. Probably won the game in that first half. The credit to Salford was that they hung in and made a game of it in the second half when it looked like they could have been blown away. But there's some great determination there in Paul Rowley's side. I think playing in blue, nah. If you call the Red Devils, don't play in blue. Have a charity kit. I'm sure it had a resonance and a meaning, but just don't play in blue. But no, it was an entertaining game, and I think both teams like to play a certain way, and it was a lovely contrast of styles that Huddersfield clearly do play a lot of very good attacking rugby. They do it on the basis of what they want to drain energy from the opposition first. So they tend to take it out of you before they play expansive rugby, and they can play. Jermaine McGilvery said afterwards, playing as well as he's ever played in his career, because they're getting the ball to him. That's not a team that just plays structure and system. They're exciting as well, but they do know when to play it. I think the interesting thing was that Salford showed that they probably aren't going to get drawn back into the teams towards the bottom. They are going to challenge for the teams in the middle. They're very much the side, as we've always said, their squad is the thinnest, so that when they have injuries, it affects them more than anybody else. And we have had some injury. Gareth Widdup now looks like he's out for the season, and one or two others. Prognosis is not good. So if Salford can keep their main players, of which Callum Watkins and Brodie Croft are arguably the two that they need on the field as much as possible between now and the end of the season, They look all right. It was an entertaining game, an enjoyable game.
Gareth Widdop, of course, was heavily rumoured with a move to Cass, and now he's injured. They can announce him in the way that Hull did with Jake Truman. When are Cass going to announce Jacob Miller's off there? Because everyone seems to know this is going to happen. I mean, I don't know anything that's going to happen. I need to point this out. I don't know anything, but everyone seems to know these things. Then when they get announced, you're like, didn't this happen months ago? And you're like, no, because they've only just been announced. But everyone knows what's going to happen.
Would that be the same announcement about Luke Gale moving from Hull to Wakefield to fill the gap by Jacob Miller, who's gone to Castleford?
You might want to wait a bit. You might want to wait a bit.
Who's gone to Hull. So it's like a virtuous circle.
Just wait a bit, Luke. Don't make a decision yet. Don't be hasty. Oh dear. Warrington Wolves. You mentioned Gareth Widdop there. They didn't need him. Scored his try, went off the pitch, and they put the Catalans to la sword. Ben Garcia's here. I mean, ridiculous. We said this every week about the people who play this ridiculous sport, and there's another example of it. But an off day for the Catalans, but a very good performance from Warrington. Their fans look very happy at the end on the telly. Darryl Powell even smiled, so that's a positive to see. Going into that huge game this Saturday at the Menderhurst Jungle, the Darryl Powell exciting trophy match. Winner gets custody of Ollie Holmes as Warrington play Castleford. But getting ahead of myself, Warrington, a very impressive performance from a team who've been generally rubbish in 2022.
I think the first stroke of genius was to play in a kit that camouflaged them to the pitch. Brilliant. Now, I think we should mention Skyo and everything that everybody's trying to do with acknowledge the fact that, we need to try and find ways of saving energy in the climate, and hats off to Warrington for coming up with a completely recycled kit. Brilliant. We were saying up there about Warrington that there was going to be a game where they were going to click because they've just got too many good players for it to continue. The psychological side of the game is one thing, and the more you get into this losing habit, the harder it is to get out of. And there was a feeling that their luck still wasn't with them when Widdop scores the opening try, and then you lose him for the rest of the game. But actually, they look like a team that I think Darryl Powell has designs on making them. Speed was right at the heart of everything, and getting the ball out wide to the likes of Jake Wardle and Matty Ashton, that really had an important effect. The Dragons are busted at the moment, partly through their own making. The suspensions that they've got meant that they were lightweight in the pack. Well, it would be if your three main men that you rely on to create a physical presence aren't there through overdoing it the week before. Against Steve McNamara, very honest and open about the way his team played. I think Darryl Powell, a little bit irked that some people had said his team might be involved in a relegation battle. I do believe that may be us as well.
Oh, he can't listen to this podcast. He can't.
No, but I think we did say that if you keep losing, you get dragged into something. And had they lost against the Dragons, they would have had 12 points. They'd have been 2 points off Wakefield and only 4 off Toulouse. So I think it was fair to say that they would have been dragged into it. Nobody said they would be relegated. They do have a lot of quality. George Williams looked a bit more like the settled George Williams that Darryl wants him to be. They seemed a happier team once they got in the lead. The week before they got in the league, looked like they had it won, and Salford found a way to beat them in the last 10 minutes. And you start then questioning, it's not the ability, it's the temperament. Once they got ahead against the Dragons, they didn't let that go. So I think that will be the big thing for Darryl, that they have produced a performance. Their fans were there in number. They were vociferous. They've had to put up with a lot this year in terms of ridicule of other fans. They were happy as they were leaving, and he was happy that he'd given them an event and occasion that they could look at. Makes the top 4 interesting, because Huddersfield then end up at the end of the weekend above the Dragons, which is really interesting, bearing in mind that Huddersfield go to St Helens this week. So that's another test of whether they're going to stay in the top 3. I think Warrington now are one of those teams that are in that mid-table mix and still could make the playoffs. I think, like Leeds, if they did, they wouldn't trouble the final. But they're looking up rather than down this week.
And looking up rather than down as well, Hull FC, who beat Hull KR 34-28. But as you mentioned earlier, Mikey Lewis, what a talent he is on the losing side here. But someone's got to be alongside George Williams in the World Cup. I mean, it's probably going to be Johnny Lomax. I'm not saying it's going to be Mikey Lewis, but it's got to be in contention for the squad at least, hasn't he? Because he is one of those X Factor players.
Yeah, he was brilliant, and I think what's going to benefit him even more is having Danny Mcguire coaching him every day. I know that Danny's been doing a lot of the hands-on coaching anyway, but he is going to encourage Mikey Lewis to. He was almost Danny Mcguire out there. Danny's had some fantastic Magic weekends. I think scored 5 tries once against Bradford. He may have scored 5 tries twice at Magic. I can't remember, but. Mikey looked in the way he was on the end of things, the way he was prepared to try things, a little bit like Danny when he was that age. So that relationship is going to blossom, I think. Lachlan Coote's goal kicking, everybody was talking about afterwards, and it happens even to the very best. Neil Fox will have had a day when clearly he didn't kick every goal that was expected of him, and he was the best of all time. So it does happen. I don't think you can do a lot more than score more tries than your opposition and not win. And it does come down to Hull got some real energy from the loan players that they brought in and from the young players that they gave a chance to. I know that they gave Jack Walker man of the match on Sky. I thought it was Ellis Longstaff. That's as good a debut as I've seen, and not just for the 2 tries that he scored, but the try-saving tackles that he made as well. So the energy that he and Jack Walker brought in, and even Josh Sim, who scored a try, lifted Hull. They'd been in a real hole the week before. But it was just a great game, wasn't it? We often say that these derby matches are for the fans of those 2 teams, and we shouldn't intrude on them. We should just sit back in our armchair with a drink of choice and watch it all unfold for our entertainment. And that was brilliant. You can probably pick some defensive reads to pieces if you want. Some attacking plays that forward passes. Was it 3 tries disallowed for Hull KR for forward passes? I don't think any of them were particularly contentious. Certainly not in the way that the Minchella try seemed contentious. But Hull KR 4 tries disallowed, scored more than their opposition. Had one chalked off at the end that looked like it might well have been a try. I don't think they could have done a lot more. Great game, great atmosphere at the end of it. It was a fitting and perfect end to a great weekend.
Yeah, Sid wasn't happy, but he's never happy. And you've got to give credit to Hull FC for being able to integrate that number of players they've brought in at a late date to come into the side in a big game, in a big stadium against their local rivals. Not sure about Longstaff doing the old badge punching thing when you've been there 2 minutes. Not sure about that, but
especially when you're on loan and you got to go back and punch the Warrington badge in 3 weeks' time.
All that. But yeah, it was a great ending.
Big test for Hull this week when they go to Wigan, and we'll see if it was the emotion of the occasion that got them up, or whether they have cured some of the more structural issues that had affected them the week before.
Yeah, an exciting weekend. Saints Huddersfield on the telly on Friday, Wigan Hull as well on Friday. Saturday afternoon on Sky, it's Cass Warrington. Saturday evening at some point, Toulouse versus Leeds. Sunday, Hull KR Wakefield and Salford versus Catalans. I'm going to have to find a radio because I'm away, so I'm going to have to find a radio to listen to the commentary on Sunday because it's going to be so warm. I'm not going to be able to do anything. I don't want to go out or do anything because I'm going to melt.
You want to do a Boris and sit in your fridge, don't you?
Yeah. I don't know if the caravan's got a fridge in though. Certainly not a fridge I can fit in. So Magic Weekend gets the thumbs up. I know they've got to do the review and all that, but I just wish to say, we're going back to Newcastle next year because everyone likes it.
I understand that they have to have negotiations with Newcastle United, and they also have to work out, has it been viable for them and what date it suits. And, you are at the mercy of when the next set of football fixtures come out. So it's not quite as easy to just say, we'll do it. But I think, you sign a multi-year contract and say, we can't give you the date it's going to be next year, but it's definitely going to be in Newcastle.
Because no one liked Anfield, so we're not going back there. So,
and Chicken Cottage must be rubbing their hands together with the money that they took this week.
I say, Wilson was there on Friday night. I mean, he must be the hardest working man in rugby league. Broadcasting was on 3 different broadcasters this weekend, wasn't he?
Everywhere. Everywhere he was. Premiere on Friday, Talk Sport Saturday, Sky Sunday.
Share it around, Mark.
Whatever they pay him, it's not enough.
And what? Here's another thing about Sky's coverage this weekend, which people may or may not have picked up on, and if you were there, you weren't have done. It was mainly a commentator and a summariser, and not Emily different people.
Really interesting. I mean, that may be because of necessity, because clearly they needed to, make sure that their resources were. But actually, from the highlights I've seen, and it worked. And Widnesbound Kyle Amor.
Yes. Well. Yeah. Good luck to Kyle in his future endeavours at Widnes, who won as I run through the championship. They came from behind to beat Dewsbury 20 points to 16. First win for John Keir. Lee won at work.
But actually, that was a really late victory. That looked with the score. Again, you can only follow the scores coming in when you're watching games, but that looked like London had pulled off a stunning win there and lost very late on.
Lee won at Warrington 66-0. Fev won at London 42-22. I'm doing Sunday first. I'm working backwards because I'm on the BBC website. Barrow beat Whitehaven 40 points to 6. Who was the player who had a pint thrown at him? The Barrow player. And his teammate T. Ritson tweeted, "I hope it was piss." That's a bit harsh.
That's not nice, is it?
That's his own teammate. League One on Sunday. Hunslet 54, West Wales 6. Oldham 24, Rochdale 50. On Saturday, Doncaster beat Paul.
Wasn't that a big comeback as well? Weren't Rochdale a lot down and scored a lot of points to win that? It's
Rangy Chase, isn't it? So it's all on Saturday, Cornwall lost to Doncaster 44-10. I think they had a man sent off early as well in that one. Not that Doncaster wouldn't have won anyway.
Doncaster's that 4 on the trot?
Yeah, they've found some form now, haven't they? North Wales back to form because obviously they had that great start, had a bit of a wobble, won at Midlands 46-16. And London didn't play Keighley because of the old doctor thing, which is really ugly.
Doesn't make you look like a professional sport.
No, and we know there are reasons why, but and on Friday, Batley beat Sheffield 20 points to 18 at the Olympic Legacy Park, which sounded like a very exciting game. And Newcastle Thunder beat Bradford Bulls 53-10. Now, that's a great result for Newcastle, especially any floating fans who turned up because it's Bradford and they're famous.
Well, there were nearly 3,000 now, were there?
There you go. Bulls malcontent fan Andrew Foster tweeted me last week and said, would we talk about the appointment of Mark Dunning as new Bradford Bulls super head coach from his interim role? The problem he's got as coach is when your club comes out and says, oh, yeah, we've had job applications from around the world. And I compare this back to we're not appointing Richard Agar as Wakefield coach. He's your new coach. It's Richard Agar. As soon as you say one thing and then do another, he's on the back foot, regardless of whether he does a good job or not, because people are expecting something. Even if you don't tell them, they might expect something that they're not going to get, and you've raised their expectations. So
you'll be able to read in the new issue of 4020 in shops this Friday. Subscribe and get it a day early. Brian Noble, who is going to. Well,
is he not back?
No, he is. He's there in an advisory capacity, but there's a limit to what you can do as an advisor. And he says, it's not just about trying to help out a coach who seems like a like-minded guy, a Bradfordian who wants to do well for a club that's clearly close to his heart. But there are some structural issues, one of which is the stadium, that need to be resolved for anybody who is there as a head coach or an advisor in any capacity to have an impact. And they know that. So there's two things. What do you do with the ground? I think they feel that being identified as a city of culture, sport has to play a part in that, and there may be some reinvigoration of debate with the council about actually solving this Odsal conundrum, and that would be important. I think the other thing then is clearly it's about recruitment and investment in players, and at some point somebody at Bradford has to say, if we're serious about what we want to be, and Brian's already done an interview with a national newspaper saying he sees Bradford as a Super League club. Well, he also is saying that to do that, you've got to do what Featherstone and Lee are doing. And to do that, you've got to have a person that's prepared to probably put up to £1 million in. And if that isn't the current regime, which it isn't, their job then is to go and find commercial partners who can make that happen. So yeah, it's not quite as simple as who you appoint as coach and who you bring in as an advisor. It's the systemic issues that are part of the Bradford situation. And Andrew is right to keep asking the question, but I'm not sure the answers are as easy as the questions are that are thrown out from the point of, is there anybody in Bradford who's going to rock up and genuinely have £1 million, rather than the people that have over the last 3 or 4 administrations and actually haven't had it?
And you can say the same thing about Wakefield and Castleford to an extent. Do they rely on the money they're given free every year from Sky rather than rich owners? And the answer to that probably is yes. But if there's not someone rich out there who wants to buy your club, what do? And this I think is one of the arguments at Wakefield about, well, why don't they spend money on this, that, and the other? Because they don't want to go bust again.
And I think that's the interesting thing about Newcastle, who again, for a couple of reasons, produced a really big performance. Josh Wood's outstanding. He had every reason to, and great sympathy to him for losing his brother in the lead up to the game. And clearly that had an effect on the whole Newcastle squad. But they do have an investor there. And whilst he's not a Marwan Kukash type, I'm going to deliver this. This is a guy who can see 24/7, 365-day usage of his really smart Kingston Park Stadium and wants rugby league to be a part of it, and is prepared to invest some of the money that he's got and has put into rugby union into rugby league. He seems to be a genuine guy. I'll probably leave tomorrow now, I've just said that, but no, he seems to be a genuine guy. And I think the way they've gone about things, and they've had a disappointing season as well up until this result. But long term, you look at it and think there's a plan there. There's a strategy there. There's a facility there. There's increasing numbers of young players playing there who will at some point come through, and the core of that team will be, what all of the great teams have had in them. And maybe there'll be some bigger signings down the road to push them further up the table. So, the coach of Newcastle, I think, will be a better prospect than the issues that Mark Dunning has to deal with at Bradford, which in some ways are nothing to do with Mark Dunning.
I'll wait for the Bradford MP to mention John Bateman and the Burgess brothers again, and forget about the 20 years that have passed since. And they've got the same problem that Wakefield and Castleford have had with their stadia. Wakefield and Castleford having to do things piecemeal, rather than having a big shiny new stadium built somewhere. I don't know what Bradford can do about Odsal. I don't know the geography of the ground, whether you can improve things or not. With the stock car racing thing there now, which amusingly was on Free Sport the other week when the rugby wasn't on from Bradford. I don't know what they can do, and you can't trade on past glories. Clubs can't do that. Wigan didn't. They had to move on. I don't know what the answer is. I don't think anyone knows what the answer is, apart from someone with millions and billions of pounds who wants to throw it away. And unless there's someone in Bradford who has all that money that they wants to do that, in the way that there's someone at Lee and there's someone at Featherstone who wants to bankroll a gamble for one roll of a roulette wheel every year, spin of a roulette wheel, roll of a dice, mix up my metaphors, then you're going to be in the same position. And that's not the fault of whoever's in charge at Bradford right now. If you ain't got money, you ain't got money. That's just tough. And if you spend money you ain't got, you end up back where you were. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is for Bradford. It's not, though. Everyone's saying, "Oh, well, they were big 20 years ago," and
and it's not going to change overnight. And I think, again, looking too much into who they have appointed as their coach is not the issue that they've got at the moment. But I don't know how much money Andrew's got, but maybe he could be the secret investor.
But I'm not emotionally attached to them, so in the same way that if you ask me about Keighley or Swinton or whatever, no disrespect
again,
to the teams, not mine.
New columnist this month, Andrew Henderson.
I've heard of him.
So you'll be able to read about what's happening at Keighley as well as in League One.
Excellent.
And they actually, again, have got a model that has seen investment from new owners, but involves yes, signing some players that are going to get them out of League One, but a real community programme. And I think, again, Bradford need to find some way of tapping into building some bridges there that were clearly lost with everything that happened.
Well, as I mentioned before, the demography, is that the word, of Bradford is different than what it was 30, 40 years ago. So there are challenges. There are challenges for every city and every place that has a club in trying to make money. And Bradford are just the latest on that line. It doesn't mean when people say, well, Leeds have never replaced that derby with Bradford. Yeah, Cass came along and that's it. I'm not saying it's the same, but
there's rivalry.
There's always rivalries. As we run out of time, is there anything else that we need to talk about this week? I don't know. I'm in holiday mode, so I don't really know what's going on anymore.
Are you D-Mob happy?
Well, yeah, and I've got a few more days, and then I'm away. So there might not be a podcast next week unless I can find some Wi-Fi. Because if it is really hot and we can't do anything, then I might as well just make videos and stuff. But I'm sure there's something I was going to ask people to do, but I can't remember what it was. No.
I think there probably will be some more player movement in the next week or two, but other than that, I think we just about covered everything.
Yeah, we don't really break news on this program because
no,
it's just transfers. If it's not involving your club,
man must know his limitations, and breaking news is not ours.
If your club's not involved in a transfer, who cares? Jay Trimm's off to Hull. All right, fair enough. But the magazine is out on Friday. What's in it?
You're asking someone who 10 minutes before deadline was still... there's a lot of international stuff in it because clearly we had the two representative weekends, and it's great to almost be having a dry run for the World Cup, and a lot of comment and fallout from that about where do we go from here and what does it mean and what did it mean to the players and why is International Rugby League still so important. There's clearly the Magic Weekend and the fallout of that. I don't think that there's too many huge exclusives in there. Craig Lingard comes up with an idea that isn't the Bash Weekend.
All right, because that's coming up, isn't it? I need to find out if I'm working or if I'm going to go to that or not. I should before I forget, because I did share at least one press box with him at Bellevue. Raise a glass to John Gwynn, who passed away this week. Who was I wrote it on Twitter. Someone who was able to find the right words for the right time, an absolute master of the craft, and
didn't over talk, so that when he did, it was meaningful. I've sat next to him in a number of press boxes when he's been doing local radio in Manchester, and again, another of these. You come to him, you've got 30 seconds. It's a real gift to be able to sum up everything you've watched, whether it's nothing or a load of things, in 30 seconds, eloquently, and get it across enthusiastically to the listener, and he never ever failed to do that.
10 years ago, I was working at the Grand Slam of Darts for the sponsors, and we used to interview John every day to get his bets on the darts. And about 6-8 months later, at the Premier League darts in Sheffield, and he came down from the commentary box and found us before it started, and he remembered us, and it's like it's one of those things where, and it sounds stupid when you say it out loud, but that's something you're never going to forget, because he's someone who's actually really good, and it's very
which
sad.
takes us back round to Magic, that there are some people, either as fans or players or LDRL or kids, who will have had some moments this weekend that they will never forget, and as a sport, that's what you want.
Now, people who are going to have moments that they never forget in the future are the Welsh Wheelchair Rugby League team, because they're going somewhere, and you're going to find out where in a moment. And if you
first team to do it as well.
Yes. So if you don't know about it, I'm not going to spoil it because we talk about it in the middle. But there is an opportunity where if you're a business or someone who's got some money and you don't want to spend it on Odsal Stadium or chairs at Bellevue, then there's an opportunity for you to use some money to some good use. And you'll find out what that is in a moment when we speak to Harry Jones. We might be back next week. We might not be. We'll be back in the future talking some more rugby league. The magazine is out this week. So buy that. Enjoy your rugby league and enjoy this interview with Wales Rugby League superstar, Harry Jones. So before we let everyone know, Harry, who may have missed the big announcement last week, because it's frankly ridiculous where you're going. I mean, I've been watching rugby league for 30 years. So when anyone mentions anywhere extremely exotic, I think, how the hell did this happen? But Harry, how did you get involved in Wheelchair Rugby League in the first place?
Oh, so I first got involved with the sport when North Wales Crusaders did their launch or open day, it was branded as both, back in 2013. I went along as I was in recovery from a separated AC joint in my right arm. So I was like, bit of rehab, quick and easy fix to get back to playing the running game. My dad was disabled, so he was very keen to get involved. And then one thing led to another. I ended up playing for the Crusaders. I was their first ever captain, first ever goal kicker, most cap player at this point, Welsh international. And it's just all snowballed from attending this open day, really.
I was going to say, it's probably the wrong phrase, but almost a complete accident then that you got involved and have ended up in this position.
Oh, yeah, complete accident. I thought, it'll be an easy way for me to get my shoulder back moving. And then it turned out I actually enjoyed this variation of the sport more than I enjoyed running around on a field.
So you played the running game before then?
Yeah, I used to play the running game for my local team in Wrexham, and I represented the North Wales rep team at under 16s level.
You've not had a bad career then since 2013, as you say, going on to all this success with Wales. What is it like to go out there and represent your country at international sport?
I know it's cliche, but no words can describe it. It's something else. Being me personally, I was told I'd never really amount to much in sport as a child, because I wasn't really a sporty child. I was a dancer, believe it or not. And then being able to go out there on a national stage in my first ever Four Nations, with just snippets here and there, doing the rounds on social media and other platforms, and then onto bigger and better things, and World Cup in 2017 on that global stage, it brings a tear to my eye every time I enter that, and every time I enter that court, every time I sing that anthem. I will believe now I'm the first player in tears when that anthem starts playing, and I'm always last off the court.
I mean, you're the second person then I know then who's switched from dancing to rugby. Are there any transferable skills from dancing to Wheelchair Rugby League?
Coordination, massively. My hand coordination is just so, it needs to be so up there, being able to push, pass, as well as being able to center my balance and my center of gravity in my chair to make sure I don't tip out, tumble, fall. But then also if I do fall, I have to brace properly. People think, it's a case of hands out and then drop onto your forearms like you would if you're playing the running game, but it's completely not. It's completely different, but there are some transferable skills. I need to transfer running game into wheelchair, but there's some I've been able to transfer or adapt slightly.
Is that one of the first things people ask you? Because I was talking about Wheelchair Rugby League at the weekend to someone, because we were at the Women's Euros in Sheffield, and obviously the World Cup's coming up, and some of the games are in Sheffield, and we're thinking about going along. And the first thing they say is, how do they get back in the chair? Is that the kind of thing that people ask you when you say, I am a Wheelchair Rugby League person? It's that kind of silly question, I guess.
Yeah, I get questions like, you've got legs, why do you play in a wheelchair? And then I explain that one. Like, does it hurt? I'm like, not really, because you've got like that protective barrier of the front of the wheelchair. And they're like, what happens if you come out? I'm like, well, this is different because it's different for everyone. Obviously, I'm lucky enough to have the use of both my legs, so I just unhook my foot and use that to lift myself up. But then you've got other players that don't have legs at all, and they're somehow able to right themselves. I remember the 2016 Four Nations in Rochdale. One of the players that he now doesn't play wheelchair rugby league, he played for Leeds at the time. To get himself back up, he used to do a backwards roll in his wheelchair, and the momentum would flip him back up. So it's all about, for me, the easiest way is to explain. It's just you use your own momentum, like how tackle technique in the standard variation is. You use the person with the ball's momentum to tip them back. You use the momentum of either someone else pushing against you to lift you up, or in like a press up type position. Use that momentum, and then I flick my hips forward, and I'll get straight back up.
We hear a lot about siblings playing together. What's it like playing with your father? What's that kind of? How does that play on the emotions when you're out there on the pitch?
Look, I say that. Luckily, I've not been able to play with him for a number of years, but it was something else because I got into rugby league very late. Well, we both did. My dad was a diehard rugby union fan, and we didn't get into rugby league until I birthed in North Wales. So I was 12 at the time. So I was a very late bloomer into rugby league, and then so I knew from a young age if I ever wanted to play rugby, I'd never be able to play alongside him because of his health conditions and age and whatnot. But then wheelchair was something else. I'll never get over it. First game I played against Swindon St George, I started, and then about 15 minutes in, my dad came on as a sub. So me and my dad were playing, my mum and my sister were watching, and it was something. And then weird coincidence as well coming on from that. My dad set me up for my first ever try. So my dad put me over the try line, and then the season after I repaid the favour and put him over for his first ever try. And now he's off coaching, and I'm still playing.
Brilliant. I mean, we mentioned the World Cup coming up this autumn. How much are you looking forward to that? Because it's going to be a great tournament and a great spectacle and a great advertisement for the sport itself.
Oh, like I said, the huge thing on it is the spectacle of it. Some people still think it's quite a niche sport, but it's not, is it? It's like it's on BBC. BBC don't pick up the littlest of things, do they? Sky don't pick up the littlest of things when games are on there. But the fact that it's on sort of like home soil, it's in the UK, it's familiar territory, and it's just how big of an honour it is to be able, if I get selected, of course, to be able to say, I played at the World Cup, but not only did I play at a World Cup, I played at it on national television in front of potentially millions and tens of millions of people for my country against the best players in the world in the most inclusive sport in the world.
You've got an interesting group because you've got obviously Scotland, who you play regularly, the USA and France, the defending champions, who of course we saw play England a few weeks ago. Which of the games we should be looking forward to in that group to see the best of Wales?
Oh, the best of Wales. I'd say France, because we know they're our toughest competition. They're the best in the world. Every team that plays France has always got something to prove. Yes, we're not England. Yes, we're not any other team in the world. We are this small nation, but we're bigger than that. We want to go out there and prove against these big, heavy hitters that have been playing the sport longer than it's even been a thing in Wales, that we're up there to challenge. So we're up there for the fight. We're not going to roll over. Pardon the pun. We're not going to go out there and try and play better than we are. We're going to aim to go out there and play our best style of rugby. Our rugby keeps us more comfortable, and it makes it more enjoyable for us. So I'd say the France game, to get the best out of us. The game we think personally as a team is going to bring the most out of us is the USA game, because we've never played them before. They're completely new to the sport. They're completely unknown territory. So we've got to get in that mindset of not being able to go, right, they're complete novices. They're completely new to the sport, because they're not. They've got Paralympians, wheelchair lacrosse players, wheelchair American football players. We know that they'll be good. We just know that our rugby skills have got to be on point that day. So I think France and the USA game is going to be our two main focuses of that tournament. Because, like I said, we play Scotland on a regular basis. We know them inside and out. We know them like we know ourselves at this point. For goodness sake, domestically, the club I coach at played against Dundee at the weekend, and the Dundee was a lot of the Scotland players. So we know them domestically and internationally, but it's got to be France. It's got to be France. Who doesn't want to watch a team play against the best in the world?
Oh, and with the ticket prices the way they are, it's a great opportunity for people, if they have never seen it before, to see some top quality international sport at a very cheap price as well.
Oh, definitely. Like, when can you ever say that you've been able to go and watch a World Cup live on television for such a cheap cost? Like, for me, I studied events management in university, so I know how like FIFA do it all, how UEFA do it all, and how all these other sports like the Olympics, how they do all their price brackets and all that. And it's just all them sports, you pay big money to watch big teams. Whereas for us, you pay little money to watch big teams on a big stage. If you want to watch rugby on a budget, watch wheelchair rugby at the World Cup. If you want to watch hard-hitting, fast rugby that's entertaining and inclusive for everyone, and you think you and all your family will enjoy it, but you want to go and watch more than one game, come and watch the wheelchair version. Because when you look at the prices, you can watch all our games for the price of some of the men's or women's games on their own.
I think in Sheffield as well, especially where many of the games are going to be, there's a big ice hockey tradition there. I've watched ice hockey there for years as well, and there are similarities when I watch the two between. And it sounds bizarre because obviously the rules are completely different and the idea is completely different. But when I watch the two, it's just the movement on the pitch. And I've had a go in a chair for an hour, and it was a great experience. And I'd love to do it again. I'm completely useless, but it was great fun. We've got to stop telling people that you know, the noise is great when you bash into each other. But you told people it doesn't hurt. Everyone says it doesn't hurt. We've got to keep this mystery up that you're all massively tough people out there getting bashed about.
Yeah. The big one that you said about the noise, it sounds worse than it is. Because at the end of it, you're slapping two huge pieces of metal together. It's going to sound a lot worse when the reality is you're a good couple of inches away from the other person.
I've got to mention one of your teammates because she's at Leeds, Jodie-Ann Boyd-Ward. She's extremely competitive, I think is a fair way of describing it.
Oh, she sure is at training. She brings a different level on all sorts. She brings that experience, but also a lot of fun, a lot of banter. But then on the other side, really competitive. It's down to the point like when we do like bleep tests, when we do little training scenarios, you know that you're up against it when you're against her. You know you've got to put all the work in just to get against the competitive streak.
She helped me tackling when I had my little try in the chair, so I'm very much indebted to her. So the World Cup's coming up, but then next year, here's the big announcement from last week. You're going to Brazil. How did this come about? How the hell did this happen?
Well, this happened through my club, North Wales Crusaders. I'm one of the trustees there, and playing the sport for years, as I'm sure every club in the world will know across all variants of rugby, you just get an abundance of kit buildup. You just have years of playing kit just stashed in storage for years on end. And then Brazil announced that they were going to launch the sport. So I reached out and said, look, we've got a load of old playing kit. They're up to international regulations. They're fully Velcroed. Don't need anything for them. Do you want them? Free of charge. And when I say they snapped my hand off, I'm surprised the man didn't fly over himself and shake my hand. I'd say within about 5 minutes of me sending that email saying, do you want this free kit? I had about 4 responses off him. And then it snowballed from there. It started off as a brief idea, like, and he was like, "Oh, I'd love for you to come over," and we were all like, "Yeah, I'm sure you would." And then we got more serious about it, and we had the conversation of, "Oh, let's look into it a bit more." And then now it's a case of they've said they want to play international rugby against us. They want us to help their development of domestic levels. So we were like, "Yeah, let's go over. Let's spend 10 days in that South American sun in February. Let's use that momentum from the World Cup. Let's use the profile of the sport and help a new nation develop." Because that's all what rugby is. It's a family, and we want to prove that we're willing to put the graft in, and we're willing to travel halfway across the planet to help a new developing nation spread the good word of our sport.
I hope you're going to document this, because it sounds like some kind of bizarre one of these sporting documentaries that you see and you think, how did this happen? This is the kind of thing that needs to have some kind of film written about it.
Well, thank you. Well, we're hopefully in talks. Well, I say hopefully. We're in talks with a few broadcasters that
Excellent.
may potentially be coming over with us. If not, there's some local ones in South America that want to broadcast the whole thing. But worst case scenario, we'll document it all ourselves, because, like I said, it's a phenomenon. It's something different. Like we saw it a few years ago. Like England went to France, England went to Australia, and I see that as they're going to a nation that's already fully developed in the sport just to play international rugby. Yeah, it's great. You're getting international game time, but why not help a new team? Why not fly to a new nation that wants to set up? So that's where it just came from, really. Like, we want to help other people. We're not in it for ourselves. We're not in it for our own benefit. We're in it to develop them. We're in it to benefit them. They want to be in the next World Cup. We want to make sure that they get into that World Cup by helping them develop.
Yeah, no one's in rugby league for the money. That's something we
Yeah,
certainly do.
exactly.
So, I mean, is it all funded? Do you need sponsors? What are you? Are you just flying out there and just randomly just turning up with all this kit? How's it going to work?
Well, I'm currently working on getting sponsors, because as I'm sure you can imagine, it's not cheap. It's going to cost each player. It's going to cost us around £1,000 each. So I am currently on the lookout for sponsors for both players and for the team as a whole. So if anyone wants to sponsor, please do reach out. I will happily talk to you. But like I said, no one's in rugby league for the money. We don't get paid. We're not paid athletes. We're not any of that. We're self-funded. We pay for it all ourselves. We pay for our training camps ourselves. We pay to get there. We pay to participate in fixtures. I saw that when we hosted the Celtic Cup this year, we paid to play in it, and that was our own home fixture. So we're always in the hunt for money, because we're not poor, but we're not funded fully by everyone.
We talk about potential of rugby league, potential of wheelchair rugby league, women's rugby league, men's rugby league, whatever. I mean, I don't know how many people live in Brazil, but I'm sure there's quite a lot. And the country's massive compared to Wales as well. It's a great potential for rugby league in general to get obviously the women are at the World Cup, as we know, and the men's game is growing over there, but for another facet of rugby league to grow over there.
Oh yeah, it's a huge untapped market for, like I said, they've got the women's in the World Cup. That's huge for women's rugby league in the Americas overall. And then you've got USA in the wheelchair. USA participated in the men's. Jamaica in the men's this year. The continent as a whole, both south, north, is a huge untapped market for all variants of the sport. Rugby union's only just tapping into the market over there to a certain extent. So why not start now with rugby league, especially from a wheelchair point of view? The sport's only just making huge headway, yet it's been going 20 odd years at this point. So let's get in at that ground level. Let's be that starting point.
I mean, as you say, it's a relatively young sport, but growing all the time. Where do you see Wales going in the future? Either with yourself still playing, or when you're sat on the sidelines just watching on.
Well, it'd be too cliche if I said Brazil, wouldn't it? But we're working up towards European Championships the next year after the World Cup. We got the Celtic Cup every year, but it's not just about the international game in Wales. We want to develop domestically. We've got North Wales having 2 teams in the RFL domestic level. We've got a number of teams in South Wales. We just want to spread the sport across the nation, have it everywhere, just so you've not got like your rugby league heartlands in Wales to a certain extent, just so it's not all south-based like it is rugby union. We want to spread it all across, spread the good word all across Wales. Let's get sport being played by as many people as humanly possible. And the big market for it is that it's fully inclusive. There's no boundaries really that you have to get through to play.
I mean, we wish you well. I mean, it's going to be an amazing experience in Brazil. I guess just going there, it's going to be a complete different. I've very, very rarely been abroad, so I don't really know much about the world. But I imagine going to Brazil is slightly different than going to France or the Netherlands or something. So I can imagine that the experience is going to be, I'm not going to say anything cliche like life changing, but just an amazing experience you're never going to forget.
Oh no, I don't think we ever will, and I think it shocked more than anything because it started off in the camp as a bit of a rumor. Oh, we could be going to South America. We could be going on tour. We could be going away, but no one knows where. But the reality is, I knew where from day one. I was the only player that was sat there like, yeah, I'm hearing all these rumors, but I know what's happening. But it's not just going to change the Welsh team. It's not going to just change the Brazilian team. We hope it changes everyone. We hope that it gives other teams the motivation to go to these nations that want to develop the sport, go into these untapped markets and produce something amazing. Because rugby league is growing slowly across the world. So why not grow all facets of the sport? Why not get teams set up in far out countries? For example, I believe Philippines have put in for the next Wheelchair World Cup. Let's go send a team to the Philippines. Help them get going. Help somewhere in Africa going. Let's just get the sport played across the world, and let's just act like one big family. Let's just show support.
One big family. It's a nice utopian feel to end this. Best of luck with the World Cup. Best of luck with the rest of the season. Best of luck with going to Brazil. If anyone does want to sponsor, what's the best way of getting in touch with?
So you can drop me an email at harry.jones@walesrugbyleague.co.uk, or just contact Wales Rugby League via social media, and the message will get passed on to me because I'm media manager as well. So it's great. Everything comes through me anyway. so yeah, if anyone wants to sponsor, please do let me know, and I'm happy to discuss the different areas in which you can help us, whether it be Brazil, the World Cup, or more further afield.
Well, fingers crossed the army of listener and viewer of this program will be in touch with you. Your inbox will never be fuller, but I can't promise anything, but fingers crossed they will be. Harry, thank you very much for your time, and best of luck with everything.
Yeah, thank you very much.